if you're watching the Olympics and a gold medal sprinter just suddenly stops running in the middle of the track and walks away, you don't instantly think, oh, they just got lazy. Or I guess they don't have the discipline for trap anymore.
Right, exactly. You'd immediately assume there's an injury, like a pulled hamstring or, fractured ankle or something.
Yeah, we instinctively look for a breakdown in the physical system. We look for a structural reason why this elite performer simply couldn't take another step. But when we look at the highest levels of academia, like when a brilliant, fiercely passionate doctoral scholar suddenly stops performing and quietly drops out, we completely flip the script.
We really do. We make it all about them.
Exactly. And welcome to the deep dive, by the way, to you, the learner. Today, our mission is to explore the silent, often hushed crisis of doctoral attrition. We've got this fascinating stack of sources spanning higher education research, sociological data, and institutional analyses, and we're using all of it to answer one baffling question.
Mm.
Why do the smartest, most passionate scholars suddenly hit a wall?
It's such a crucial question because for decades, the prevailing narrative has treated academic drop-off as this personal failure. The assumption has always been a lack of focus or perhaps a sudden deficit of grit.
Like they just weren't tough enough.
Right. But when you dig into the empirical data, that individual blame theory completely falls apart. The scholar's stagnation is rarely a personal failing. What's fascinating here is that it's almost always a symptom of a systemic, structural misalignment in the academic ecosystem itself.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because whether you are a student right now, an advisor, a manager of a corporate team, or just someone fascinated by human potential, understanding why high performers stagnate is going to fundamentally change how you view burnout and success.
Absolutely.
So to really grasp this structural failure, we have to first look at the sheer scale of the drop-off. And I mean, the numbers are honestly staggering.
They really are. We are looking at a massive silent epidemic. If you pull the quantitative data compiled by the Council of Graduate Schools, and they surveyed across 30 different institutions in the U.S., the attrition rate for PhD programs ranges from 36 to 51%.
But up to 51%.
Yeah, roughly half.
Half of all admitted doctoral scholars will just never finish their degree. I mean, these are individuals who spent years, sometimes decades, proving they are the absolute best of the best just to get an acceptance letter. To lose half of them, it's an enormous leak in the pipeline of human innovation.
It's a huge loss. And breaking down those 10-year completion rates by academic discipline reveals even more about the environment. Like in the humanities, the 10-year completion rate is at the very bottom, sitting at just 49%.
Wow.
Yeah. And then mathematics and physical sciences sit at a 55% completion rate. Social sciences average around 56%.
So still barely over half for all of those.
Right. The life sciences fare a bit better, achieving 63%. And engineering leads the pack slightly at 64%.
Even in the best case scenario, like with engineering, you are still losing over a third of your top talent. That is a colossal loss of intellectual capital. Not to mention, all the public and private funding tied up in this research.
Yeah.
But the timing of this drop-off is what really caught my eye in the research. These scholars aren't generally washing out in the first week, right?
No, not at all. The research pinpoints a very specific, highly dangerous transition point. The critical drop-off happens when a student moves from the highly structured coursework phase into the independent dissertation phase.
Right, the unstructured part.
Exactly. In academia, this is known as the ABD phase, which stands for all but dissertation.
It's like learning to ride a bike with training wheels for 2 years. You're moving fast, you feel secure, you have a designated path with a syllabus and grades, and then literally overnight, someone drops you into the middle of the Tour de France without a map, without a team, and without a radio.
That is a perfect analogy.
But what exactly is happening to them in that unstructured void? Because just being alone shouldn't necessarily break a top-tier scholar who's used to studying in isolation, right? I mean, they're academics.
Well, it's what happens inside that unstructured void that leads to a massive psychological crash. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of how society views work, we have to completely redefine our understanding of burnout.
Okay, how so?
There is a massive paradigm shift happening in academic productivity literature right now. Platforms that analyze this stuff are revealing something crucial. Burnout in doctoral students does not come from simply working 80 hours a week.
So the popular myth is that scholars burn out because they're doing too much, like they're just exhausted from the hustle.
Exactly, that's the myth.
But the data shows it's actually the exact opposite. They burn out because they feel like they are achieving absolutely nothing. It's the difference between an exhausting but rewarding climb up a mountain versus just spinning your wheels in the mud.
Yes, spinning your wheels is exactly it. That feeling of a moving finish line is the perfect way to conceptualize the specific psychological agony of the ABD phase. Burnout in this context comes from prolonged stagnation.
Because they aren't seeing any progress.
Right. By definition, scientific research operates on the frontier of human knowledge. Things are going to fail. But imagine being a scholar stuck on a failing experiment or trying to navigate an uncooperative archive in the humanities for 6 straight months.
Oh man, 6 months of nothing.
You are working incredibly hard, but you have zero visible progress to show for it.
Just month after month of dead ends.
When that happens in isolation, intrinsic motivation just collapses. The feeling that nothing I do matters is what actually drives the burnout, not the hours on the clock.
Yeah.
And then you add the structural stressors on top of that, what the literature calls financial helplessness and role overload.
Because they aren't just sitting in an ivory tower thinking deep thoughts all day.
Not at all.
They are managing undergraduate labs, acting as teaching assistants, grading mountains of freshman papers, and trying to conduct this high-level frontier research. And they are doing all of this on a limited stipend that barely covers basic on-campus living expenses.
Which keeps them in a constant state of survival mode. When a busy academic schedule leaves zero time or energy to earn supplemental income, but the stipend is insufficient for basic necessities, the brain naturally shifts focus.
You're just trying to survive.
Right. You are constantly worrying about rent. You are calculating whether you can afford groceries. And when the human brain is in a state of financial survival mode, cognitive performance naturally plummets.
Your bandwidth is entirely eaten up by anxiety.
Exactly. Research completion times get extended and quit intentions skyrocket.
When a scholar is spinning their wheels in the mud and they're constantly stressing about whether they can afford groceries next week, their mind actually starts to turn against them. This triggers a very specific, highly destructive psychological defense mechanism.
Yes. It's known as the imposter phenomenon, or IP, and it is a severe worldwide crisis in graduate education. Researchers recently conducted a massive scoping review on this. They analyzed nearly 40 years of empirical research on this phenomenon across the globe, from 1978 all the way to 2023.
Here's where it gets really interesting. When we say crisis, what do the numbers actually look like in these institutions?
They're alarming. A study at Ghent University found that 50.6% of their PhD students believed they suffered from the imposter phenomenon.
Half of them.
Yeah. And another study looked at Romanian graduate students using the Clan's imposter phenomenon scale, which is widely considered the gold standard for measuring this, and found that 56.15% of candidates experienced high or intense levels of imposter feelings.
Over half. More than 1 in 2 doctoral candidates are walking around with this deep-seated, agonizing fear that they are an intellectual fraud and that someone is about to expose them. But how does feeling like an imposter actually derail their day-to-day research?
Well, this raises an important question about how we process success and failure. Scholars experiencing IP develop what psychologists call a maladaptive attributional style.
Break that down for us. What does a maladaptive attributional style actually look like in the lab?
Their brain basically wires itself to interpret outcomes in a very specific self-destructive way. When they succeed, let's say they finally publish a paper or pass a rigorous exam, they physically cannot internalize that success.
They can't take the credit.
Right. They attribute it to external temporary factors. They'll
Yeah.
tell themselves, oh, I just got lucky, or the peer reviewer was just taking it easy on me, or my advisor is just being kind.
They completely write off their own competence.
Completely. And then when they encounter a setback, like a paper gets rejected or that experiment fails again, they immediately attribute it to stable internal permanent deficiencies.
So it's their fault.
Yes. They tell themselves, see, I'm actually stupid. I've been fooling everyone this whole time, and now they're finally going to find out.
The tragedy here is that higher education actually exacerbates this. There is a pervasive myth in academia, this culture of genius. It's this idealized image that real scholars, true innovators, just sit under an apple tree and brilliant ideas effortlessly fall into their laps. They never struggle.
It's such a damaging myth.
We force our brightest minds to wear a mask of effortless competence while they are privately drowning. It makes it impossible for them to raise their hand and ask for the mentorship they desperately need.
Exactly. To protect their social image and avoid being exposed as a fraud in this culture of genius, they fall into a behavioral trap. They start procrastinating to delay judgment.
Because if you don't do the work, they can't judge it.
Right. And they start avoiding their advisors. They hide from other students. Eventually, they just quietly drift off the academic track entirely, fully believing they were never meant to be there in the first place.
If these scholars are hiding their struggles in isolation, their survival really hinges on the one person who is supposed to be guiding them, their advisor. But the data shows that students are making a fatal error right at the start line when it comes to choosing these mentors.
This might be the most crucial takeaway for anyone entering a rigorous program, or really any highly specialized career field. There was this fascinating, highly counterintuitive empirical study that investigated the exact determinants of PhD retention and student satisfaction. What they found completely upends how students traditionally select programs.
Wait, I need to push back on this before you even drop the finding. The traditional advice is always to seek out the biggest name, right? If I have a chance to work with a Nobel laureate or a researcher who is published in every major journal, you're telling me that doesn't increase my odds of success.
That's what people think, yes.
Because prestige usually means better funding, better lab equipment, better networking. How can that not be the biggest factor?
It seems entirely counterintuitive, but the data is so clear on this. A supervisor's fame, their academic reputation, the sheer number of publications they have, none of that has any statistically significant impact on student performance or satisfaction.
Are you serious? None of it.
None of it. You could be working with a Nobel laureate, but if they won't answer your emails or if they treat you as just a cog in their publication machine, you are not going to perform well. The study found that supervisor supportiveness is the single strongest predictor of success.
So it's about managerial competence over raw research brilliance. What keeps a scholar performing is an advisor who provides mutual trust, clear expectations, regular structured feedback, and psychological safety.
Exactly. And we have to remember that brilliant researchers are essentially untrained as managers. We have survey data illustrating this massive structural design flaw. A large-scale survey of faculty supervising PhD students found that 89.6% of supervising faculty had formal training in research ethics.
Which makes sense. Institutions prioritize compliance and ethical standards to protect funding.
Sure. But only 27.7% had any formal training on how to actually mentor, and only 25.4% had training on how to advise.
Wait, let me get this straight. 3/4 of the people in charge of guiding the next generation of scientific minds have literally zero formal training in how to do it. We are taking our most promising innovators, handing them over to brilliant minds who have no idea how to lead a human being, and then acting surprised when half the students quit.
It's wild, isn't it? That isn't an individual failure, that's a massive structural design flaw. They just inherit the mentorship style of their own former supervisors, which historically means perpetuating outdated sink-or-swim models.
It's just the cycle of bad management.
And there's another fascinating dynamic here regarding professor ranks that incoming students rarely consider.
Oh, like the difference between young assistant professors and older tenured professors.
Yes. Statistically, younger assistant professors are much more likely to collaborate hands-on with graduate students. They're actively fighting for their own tenure and promotion. They need the research to move forward just as badly as the student does, creating this dynamic of mutual survival.
That makes a lot of sense. They're in the trenches together.
Right. Tenured professors, on the other hand, provide incredible career connections and high-level intellectual advice, but they are significantly less likely to engage in the day-to-day, hands-on research help that an ABD student desperately needs to avoid that stagnation trap.
This sounds incredibly bleak. We've identified a massive structural design flaw. We've got isolated students suffering from imposter syndrome, relying on untrained mentors while trying to survive on a shoestring budget. It feels like we're just pouring our best minds into a meat grinder. Is anyone actually trying to redesign this, or is academia just doomed to bleed talent?
Fortunately, progressive institutions are recognizing this and successfully re-engineering the PhD experience. The research details 3 incredibly inspiring institutional models that are actively saving these scholars by attacking the structural roots of the problem.
Let's hear them. How are they fixing the void?
First, there is the lockstep cohort model. Great example of this is the Information Systems program at Robert Morris University. They completely replaced the traditional lone scholar model with a 3-year lockstep process.
Instead of being alone in the void, you're moving as a unit.
Exactly. Students are required to attend regular community dinners. They have structured debriefings. They frequently present their research proposals to peers and faculty. This creates a loop of rapid, constructive feedback.
Which is exactly what they need.
The mechanism here is forced community. It removes the isolation that breeds imposter phenomenon. And the result of this structural shift, a massive 90% graduation rate.
90%. Compared to the national average of around 50%, that is astronomical. But does that lockstep model only work for highly structured tech or business programs? What about fields where the research is highly individualized and subjective, like the humanities?
That leads perfectly to the second approach, the companion dissertation model. This is being used primarily in fields like education and nursing. Universities are experimenting with allowing 2 PhD students to co-write and collaborate on the exact same project.
Wait, really? 2 people on one dissertation?
Yes. They share a dissertation chair, and they share a common research agenda.
It's literally shifting from a solitary confinement model of learning to a team sport.
It drastically reduces isolation because you literally have a partner in the trenches with you, validating your struggles and keeping you accountable.
That is so simple, but so brilliant.
The third model is perhaps the most comprehensive approach to dismantling that survival mode we discussed earlier, holistic institutional support. In 2022, the NYU Tandon School of Engineering launched what they call the PhD Hub. It's this centralized physical and digital nerve center.
What's their main goal with it?
Their core philosophy is radical for academia. They treat students as human beings first, not just cogs in the wheel.
Treating academics as humans, groundbreaking. But what does that actually look like in practice? How do they address the psychological traps?
They provide services that address the whole person, attacking the specific mechanisms of attrition. The Hub offers specialized writing courses, which inject structure back into the unstructured ABD phase. They even bring in local actors to run workshops to help students build presentation confidence.
Having actors teach scholars how to present is brilliant. It directly attacks the imposter phenomenon. Instead of just telling them not to feel like frauds, they are teaching them the physical behaviors and vocal patterns of confidence.
Right. It dismantles that mask of effortless competence by acknowledging that presentation is a learned skill, not some innate genius trait.
That's incredible.
They also provide dedicated mental health support sessions. And crucially, they have a dedicated financial aid analyst specifically to help doctoral students resolve funding challenges.
So what does this all mean? By actively addressing the non-academic challenges, the emotional weight of imposter syndrome, the financial terror of living on a stipend, the lack of communication skills, they clear the runway. They prevent the scholar's cognitive strengths from being sapped by survival mechanisms. They give the scholar the actual bandwidth they need to do the science.
Exactly. By addressing the human needs, the intellectual capacity is freed up to do what it was hired to do, innovate.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. If there's one thing you take away from this deep dive, it's this. When a scholar stops performing, it is rarely a lack of intelligence. It is rarely a lack of drive. It is the crushing weight of an unstructured transition. It is the silent, isolating echo chamber of the imposter phenomenon. And it is a severe lack of trained, supportive mentorship.
It's guy, right?
Whether you are navigating academia, fighting your way up in corporate America, or just trying to get a personal project off the ground, struggling is a normal part of the process. Relying on structure and support beats relying on raw, isolated genius every single time.
And if we connect this to the broader future of innovation, this raises an incredibly important and, well, somewhat unsettling question to ponder. We've seen the data. If our highest institutions of learning are structurally designed to reward the hoarding of individual prestige, awarding tenure and fame based solely on publications, while severely neglecting the actual teaching and mentoring of the next generation, what does that mean for the future of scientific discovery itself? Are we systematically filtering out the most collaborative, empathetic thinkers from the top tiers of human knowledge simply because they refuse to survive in isolation?
That is a heavy thought to leave on, but a vital one. If we only reward the sprinters who can run on a broken track, we're going to miss out on a lot of gold medals. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden architecture of academic burnout. Keep questioning the structures around you, keep supporting your peers, and we'll see you next time.